Mandukya Karika, Pranam Mantra. Om Bhadram Karne Bhishnuyam Deva Bhadram Pashe Makshabhirya Jatra Sthirairange Stustuvagum Sastanubhihi Vishema Deva Hitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhashava Swasti na Pusha Vishwaveda Swasti nastaksho Aristanemi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. We are doing the third chapter, Advaita Prakaran, covered up to verse number 8. And now begins verse number 9. Just to remind you, this third chapter is known as Advaita Prakaran, where arguments are used to establish Advaita. Initially, when this book began, it explained the Upanishad and established Advaita with the help of the Upanishadic statements, and one cannot question Upanishadic statements. We have explained why. Then comes analogies, and now comes arguments. Now, what we are going to see now, starting verse number 9, Advaita raises an objection towards itself. It says, look, the dualists, and the major attack now will be on the dualists. And Advaita, other than Advaitins, everyone is a dualist. Name any real religion, it's dualism. Name any philosophy of India, it's dualism. Take Buddhism, Jainism, they are dualism. Sankhya Yoga, they are dualism. Everything is a dualism other than Advaita. And Advaita systematically demolishes all these dualistic theories. Some of these arguments we saw in the previous verses. Now it will raise certain objections on its own, just to make the idea clear. These verses, the next verses, will be discussing three major important points. Those of you who are really interested, I'm sure all those who are listening, you are deeply interested in the subject. And these questions may come to your mind. Like when we were concluding the previous class, one gentleman had raised a question. So, although we had answered that, the problem is these things are absolutely new. Unless you keep listening to these talks, the ideas do not become clear. Nowadays, sometimes people come to meet me and they say that initially when they started listening to talks, different talks in maybe in Bengali or Hindi, they were not able to connect. After listening to 10, 15 talks, slowly they could relate and they could understand what I was talking. After that, as much they put their effort, that much they understood. Now, first objection is concerning rebirth. What about rebirth? Rebirth, which is so thoroughly accepted in Hinduism. What about the gods and goddesses? There are gods, there are goddesses, there are different beings, there are different species, and there is that famous rebirth. What about that? How do you justify that? And second objection that comes, which is pretty dangerous. Now, what about all these statements in the Upanishads that ask you, that exhort you to do sadhana, spiritual practices? If sadhana is not needed, if spiritual practices are not needed, why do you have those statements? You say that the argument is very interesting. You say that whatever you are saying is based on the Upanishads. The Upanishads themselves talk about sadhana, spiritual practices. If there's only one, who will worship whom? Now, don't please don't mind my telling it. Some people who do not understand Advaita, they keep talking about they themselves being God. And sometimes we get mails. Sometimes I get messages through this and that channel. Today, I got a message from somebody who says he wants to take mantra diksha, but he believes in Advaita and believes that no one is superior, no one is inferior. So he cannot understand from whom he should take diksha and why. Now, see, these things are absolutely misunderstood, absolutely misunderstood ideas. These notions are fully misplaced. Advaita never talks about it. What Advaita says, till you have the sense of duality, you will have to behave as per the norms of the world. Please, those of you who are deeply interested in Advaita, please understand. Till, till you have the sense of duality, here is this pen. Those of you listening to this talk, do you have this perception that speaker Samarpanananda, the pen in his hand, these are two different things? If yes, then you are still established in duality. Nothing wrong with it. The only what Advaita says, till you are in duality, you have to behave according to the rules and injunctions as per dualistic mode. But once the idea becomes clear that it's all Advaita, slowly you should start moving towards Advaita. But how do you move towards Advaita? With the help of dualism. One of our listeners, she told me after the previous talk that important point in the previous talk was we are trying to grasp something with the help of our mind. That's something which is beyond mind. That cannot be done. But what about sadhana? Why do you need dualistic sadhana? At least in the beginning. It is because if you take the example of, say, a pole vault, you want to jump through an obstruction, or you are simply a pole vault jumper. What do? You take a pole, run, take the help of the pole, make the great leap. Now, while making that great leap, you let go of that pole. That is the most crucial thing. You need the pole to jump. You need to let go of the pole to jump. You need to take help of all that mind has to offer. And at the crucial time, you have to let go of the mind. This is best understood by Advaita Sadhana by Sri Ramakrishna. When Totapuri came and taught Advaita Sadhana, Sri Ramakrishna was established in dualistic mode of worship. There is nothing wrong with the dualistic mode of worship. For him, Mother Kali was everything. So when he was trying to meditate on non-dual consciousness, Mother Kali was continuously appearing before him. So he said he cannot do it. Totapuri then took piece of broken glass, pierced in between his eyebrows, said, "Focus here." Mother Kali came again. Basically, what is Mother Kali when we are talking about Sri Ramakrishna? The highest manifestation of pure consciousness, Satchidananda, Brahma, in the world of mind of Sri Ramakrishna. So, someone who is a devotee of Sri Ramachandra, Mother Kali will not come before him. Sri Ramachandra will come before him. One who is a devotee of Sri Krishna, to him or her, Sri Krishna will come, Mother Kali will not come. Why? Your mind is your empire of mind. It has nothing to do with the mind of others, nor does it have anything to do with the cosmic mind. Your mind is your mind, the way your body is your body. Now, from the very beginning, you did sadhana with, say, Mother Kali. So the last obstruction will be Mother Kali. If you did sadhana with Krishna, last obstruction will be Lord Krishna. If you try to understand other religions, you will instantly understand why this prophet proposes the name of this God and that prophet proposes the name of God, that God. Reason being, they grew up with that. So for them, Brahman, the pure consciousness, appeared to him. Why appeared to him? Because mind is working in that form. I am sure if you just listen to this portion, you will understand the whole concept. Why we have so many religions, why religions differ. The difference doesn't lie with the religious masters. The difference lies with the followers of these masters. These masters would understand. If Sri Ramakrishna were to meet, say, Lord Buddha or say Lord Krishna, Sri Ramakrishna would have never had any difference with, say, Buddha or Krishna. He would have known what was happening. It is the followers who have the problem because they do not understand how the world of spirituality works in the world of mind. So, till you have this sense of duality, till you understand two, you will have to take help of this world. So, what about rebirth? Is it true or not? What about sadhana? Is it true or not? And more importantly, sadhana has been prescribed in the Upanishads themselves. And much more seriously, what about the ideas of creation? Ideas of creation that you find in the Vedas, Nasadiya Suktam. We have talks in English on Nasadiya Suktam, Purusha Suktam. Those of you interested can listen to those talks. What about Nasadiya Suktam? What about Purusha Suktam? What about the various ideas of creation that the Upanishads have? And then in Taittiriya Upanishad, they talk about 5 sheaths, 5 coverings: Annamay Kosh, Pranamay Kosh, Manomay, Vijnanamay, Anandamay, etc. What about them? Do you want to say that these are all false? So the objections are now raised from the standpoint of common understanding and from the standpoint of scriptures. Mandukya replies. So once we get into it, it's pretty simple. It's not very difficult. Just remember, there are three objections raised. What about rebirth? What about different kinds of bodies that we have? What about gods and goddesses in the Vedas? Secondly, what about sadhana prescribed in the Upanishads? And most importantly, what about theories of creation? God created this. God created the universe in this way. In case you have any question, you can please write it down. Now, once I start, I'll go through. You know, once we start, this distraction will be difficult for me. I hope, based on what we discussed, don't go outside that, please. We just mentioned one very important thing. It was till you have the sense of duality, till you have the sense that you eat, you dress, you work. That means you are in the realm of duality. Till you are in duality, all the prescriptions and injunctions of this world will be applicable to you. However, Advait will keep shining the light like a lighthouse and will keep on telling you, okay, fine, slowly come out of it. How do you come out of it? With the help of the sadhana, which belongs to the world of duality, which belongs to the world of mind. In the last stage, you cross. And then you realize that the idea of bondage, the idea of freedom, even these were false. Even these belong to Maya. So, dear listeners, any question? If not, I'll proceed. Good. Now, if you want to understand Advait in relation to Dvait, if you want to understand pure consciousness in relation to limited consciousness, the best example that I can tell you, and the best example, I worked it out by myself, and I found it really useful because it helped me explain, because it's so difficult to make these ideas go across. Think of the screen that you are watching me on, whatever screen, computer, phone, whatever it is, television. You are seeing me fully. Here I am silent for a moment. You can see the whole of me. Now just roll your fingers, just fold your hand just like this, in a thin pinhole, and try to look at me and try to move this hole like a pinhole. See how you see me. Naturally, you will not be able to see whole of me. You will just be seeing a very small fraction of me. And depending on how small that hole is, the picture coming to you will be that much smaller. Now think that some kind of bandage, some kind of eye, as they say, eye stopper, like they put it on face of the horses, on the eyes of the horses. Stoppers. They are put. There's a very small hole. And it's made in such a way that, like the squares on a Ludo board, those of you who have played snakes and ladders might have seen their squares. And you are permitted to move from left to the right, and once it reaches the end, you go one scale higher and move in the opposite direction. You keep on moving, keep on moving. Sometimes you see this, sometimes you see that, sometimes. And the stopper is put in such a way that you cannot go back, nor can you jump forward. How will you perceive me exactly in this way? Just small bit of me at a time. Mind is like that blinker stopper. Usual word used is blinkers. Mind, your mind, my mind, his mind, her mind. It is just like a blinker, because real understanding comes from consciousness only. Mind doesn't see. Mind is the stopper, it stops. We don't even realize it. Mind is just a blinker, it's a small hole. What you are seeing is a very small part of the larger picture. As the time passes, actually, as you move, you have that sense of time. You are moving from square to square, that is second to second. And what happens? With time, that hole may get larger, hole of the blinker. You see slightly larger picture. These are the great scientists, these are the great poets. For example, we had Rabindranath Tagore, such a great poet. Why? The whole of the blinker was larger. Sages, their whole was even larger. But the rishis of the Vedas, person like Sri Ramakrishna, what happened with them? Their blinkers were removed. The eye stopper was removed. And then what happens? Saw the whole thing. Those of you who have ever visited an eye doctor might have seen, they put on some kind of special frame when they are testing your eye power. You cannot see from one eye, and then they go on testing from this angle, that angle, and suddenly they remove it, and you see the whole picture. This is the relationship between Dvait and Advait. You may not be able to, I'm sure you will be able to understand. It's not so difficult. Think of a two-dimensional person. Think of a being who just who lives in two dimension, who has no idea about three dimension. That means uh, there is this page. There is this page. It can move lengthwise. It can move breadthwise. Now think of something which is three-dimensional. Think of a sphere falling through that paper. We imagine that it can pass through it. As you know, when a sphere passes, it will create a circle. It's a very common thing. So I'm not talking something big. Whenever something passes through a surface, something spherical, it creates a circle. For example, when a bullet passes through something, it creates a circle. They say a hole. Spheres of different sizes, when passing through this two-dimensional space, will create holes of different sizes. And the being who lives purely in two dimension will say that, oh, larger hole, larger object to it, smaller hole. But they can never conceive of the sphere. Their mind is not made that way. Exactly that is our problem. Our eye stoppers are such, the glasses, the blinkers are put in such a way we can see a very little. We don't even realize it. You might ask me, how do I know? No, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I have faith in my masters, and my masters had faith in Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda had faith in Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna boldly asserted, yes, this is the truth. I don't find any reason why I should believe, say, in the words of Karl Marx and the words of Darwin and the words of Einstein and not believe Sri Ramakrishna. I don't find any reason. So, well, what we are studying is Shruti Pramana. We believe in these masters. We believe in what they have said, and that's how it runs. Strictly based on that. So, this is the idea behind non-duality, duality, infinite consciousness appearing as finite mind. I must give you a break, please, in case you have any question based on what I discussed just now. It is my responsibility to make the ideas clear. Once you have understood this, and in case you have any difficulty in understanding, you can listen from the beginning, the ideas will become clear. So now, Mandukya itself raises the objection that we mentioned. Marane sambhave chaiva gati agamayorapi sito sarva shariresu akashena avilakshanaha. The previous verse had said, Yatha bhavati balanam gaganam malinam malay. People of limited intellect, kids, they think that the sky is dirty. Or sky is curved, space is curved. But actually, it's not that. It continues the idea. Thank you, Mr. Devashish Das. He says, it is clear now. If you just listen to what we discussed, the idea will become clear. So this verse number 9 says, Atman, in regard to its birth and death, is going and coming, that is, rebirth, and its dwelling in different bodies is not unlike Akash. When you think of rebirth, if you think of rebirth, death, birth, they're just like Akash. The way we think that Akash is limited, the way we think that sky is dirty, sky is cloudy, sky is sunny, just like that. Coming and going of Atman. So does body die? No, body never dies. What die? Body disintegrates. It's quite often we make this mistake. And now in our popular things, particularly in the Hindi belt, they say, in Bengali we say, শরীর চলে গেছে. শরীর কোথায় যাবে? In Hindi sometimes they say, उनका शरीर शांत हो गया. The body was active, it has become calm. Actually, what happens? The power that was integrating material outside it into a specified structure, that power is gone. With integrating power gone, the decaying power takes over and the body disintegrates. Body disintegrates and Atman goes nowhere. So why do we say that there is rebirth? Why do we say there is birth? Because there is in between something. What is that in between? Sukshma Sharir, subtle body, which is associated with Every living being. I have a subtle body, you have a subtle body, everyone else has a subtle body. Anyone who is alive has a subtle body. Subtle body comprises the mind connected with me and certain other factors. It keeps on moving. Now that is very interesting. Atman remains the same. And based on the consciousness of that Atman, there's a force. The best way to understand this is you might have seen sometimes during summer. Nowadays, in places like Kolkata, that is cities, this cannot happen. But those of you who have lived in villages or in places where there were fields, you might have noted sometimes a very strong wind system is formed and it moves the way cyclone moves. Say, kind of a funnel. It's a wind tunnel kind of thing. It keeps on moving. When we were kids, we had seen during summertime, we used to often see it. And it used to keep on moving. And it would suck anything loose that was there on its way, the way cyclone sucks. And as it moved, it dropped certain things and sucked certain more things. And then it died out. And when we were kids, we used to be so scared and we used to imagine that there are ghosts within it or there are witches. And we kids would keep on sharing this information. If you see this kind of whirlwind, it is a ghost. And if it is of this kind, then it's a witch. So when the whirlwind, that tunnel of wind, funnel of wind, whatever you call, when it moves on the surface of the earth. Surface of earth or ocean is very important. You are needed. But actually it's not moving. Earth is not moving. And that whirlwind is no ultimate existence the way earth has an independent existence. And yet it moves. It keeps on sucking in and throwing out certain things. Subtle body is exactly like that. What moves is this subtle mind. And yet, a subtle body. And yet, subtle body doesn't have a real existence the way, say, this world has, say, this body has. This body has more real existence than the subtle body. Because think of Sri Ramakrishna's body. Just imagine. Oh my God. Miss Gargi Sarkar or Mrs. Gargi Sarkar, please write a mail to me at ishrkm@gmail.com. So we cannot discuss it here. This is your private affair. ishrkm, our email ID. So all the molecules that were used by Sri Ramakrishna in his body, they continue to be here. Sri Ramakrishna, the Atman, it continues to be the way he was. But his mind, which was connecting Atman with this physical world, that is gone forever. These things, if you think a bit, the idea will become clear. So this is what this verse says. This Atman, regarding its birth and death, is going and coming. That means death and rebirth. It's dwelling in different bodies. It keeps on creating different bodies, like movement of that whirlwind. It is just like the Akash. Akash remains untouched. It remains absolutely pure. Absolutely pure. Although ordinary minds think that way. But remember, what we are discussing here is something very high. It's not meant for ordinary minds. Of course, you people are not ordinary minds. So what about the bodies? Fine. We understand. What about the gods? What about the superior god like Indra, who is the king of the gods? Sanghata swapnavat sarve atma maya visarjita adikye sarvasamyeva nopapatir iha vidyate. All aggregates, whatever kind of aggregate, the body is an aggregate, are produced by Atman's Maya. Atman and its power. The power of Atman is Maya. It creates as in a dream. In dream also it creates bodies. Just like that, Atman creates. No rational argument can be given to establish their reality. Actually, there is absolutely no argument to prove that ideas like birth, rebirth, these are really true. So you will say, is there rebirth? Yes. If you believe in birth, then there is rebirth. If you don't believe in birth, then there is no rebirth. What we are discussing here is extremely high. Only when you know that there is no difference between you and the food that you take, then you are really competent enough, fit enough to discuss all this. So right now we are studying because these are our scriptures, and knowledge is its own end. It's not that everything needs to be practiced. When you were in class 6, class 7, you learned something about moon. That does not mean that you went to the moon or you had to go to the moon. No, it's not that. Simply because you are studying Mandukya Karika, that doesn't mean that you will have to practice Advaita. So no rational argument can be given to establish their reality, whether they are of equal status or whether some are superior to others. Whatever kind of bodies, my body, your body, they have same status. My body and body of the gods. There's a difference between the status. Gods are superior. But there is no argument to prove that any such aggregate has been produced in reality. So says, see, when we discuss things, we also have, every discussion doesn't mean that you will have to prove your point. Those of you who have studied mathematics a bit, you know that there's a very important theory in mathematics known as theory of negation. When you need to prove something, you don't have to prove it directly. You just prove that the opposite of it is not possible. When I first read about it, I was fascinated. Such a wonderful argument. This is used only in mathematics. Supposing they say that A into B equal to C under some conditions, some equation. Prove that this is correct. Supposing this cannot be proved, what you do is you prove that its opposite is not possible. So it is proved. When you say that These bodies are there. You don't have to prove whether Advaita is true or not. You just have to say that, okay, fine, you tell me how these things are real. Actually, there is no argument. So you will have to come back to scriptures. See, again, this argument is very interesting. Gaudapada, who wrote this Mandukya Karika, surely didn't have any idea about, say, Christianity or Islam. He would have incorporated them too. But when you are arguing, somebody comes to attack you and you say, what is your argument? He says, what is your argument for this? And I say, what is your argument not for this? Supposing somebody says that, can you prove that God exists? But I can also tell you, can you prove that God does not exist? That God does not exist, that also requires a proof. Now, with this kind of clash there, where he says that you prove this, I say that you prove this, and neither can prove, then what do? We fall back to the words of scriptures. This exactly is the problem where different religions cannot come to a harmony. Of all the religious systems, only Advaita has something concrete to offer. Other systems, they go by complete belief. Advaita doesn't go by belief. Advaita is the only system, religious system, spiritual system in the world that goes logically. Up to a point. After a point, you will have to have intuitive knowledge. Without intuitive knowledge, you cannot understand Advaita. That's why those who try to understand Advaita fail to understand. But when you go to any other religious system, they will say that my religious book says this, and hence this is correct. This is no argument. Here, in this Mandukya Karika, the discussion is between different sects of Hindu religion. Now that there is a clash, they will fall back to scriptures because they both accept scriptures. So we have all these different sects like Sankhya and Yoga and say Vaishnavas. They all accept the Vedas. So now comes, they fall back to the Vedas. As far as other religions are concerned, well, they all belong to this same set. Like, if you say that this is true, what is your proof? You will say that my religion says so. I'll say my religion says this. How do you reconcile? With a gun? With a sword? Is there any argument? No, that's not. That's the problem. If you try to understand, see, most of the arguments that are forwarded, say, by so-called liberals, if you counter them, they will not be able to answer. What they do is, they get down to abusing you. Essentially, there is no difference between a gun and abuses. In both these systems, you are trying to annihilate your opposition. So, the opposition, it brings up Taittiriya Upanishad in verse number 11. Rasadeyo hi ye kosha vyakhyata Taittiriya ke tesham atma parvo jiva khang yatha samprakashitah. Verse number 11. In Taittiriya Upanishad, they discuss that Supreme Self is the self of the five sheaths. They say that there's that Supreme Self Atman. It has five coverings. The inmost is Anandamaya Kosh. Outside is Vigyan. Outside that is Mana, mind, Prana, working with the forces that work within us. And finally, Annamaya Kosh, that which makes this body. So, such as the physical and the vital, which have been described in Taittiriya Upanishad, that the Supreme Self is like Akash, has already been stated. Mandukya counters it. That look, all these coverings that you are discussing, we have already mentioned that the way there are different parts and the space within each part is limited. That does not limit the original Akash. So you can have any number of sheets, you can have any number of bodies. That is not going to affect Atman in any way. We had been spending a lot of time in previous two classes, and there we had discussed in detail the concept of Akash, the space. Space is of three kinds, as we had mentioned. The space outside it, the space, the ether that has become the bottle, and the space that is inside the bottle. Apparently, there are three. In reality, there is only one. Crush this bottle, and that one alone remains. This transformation is not real, this is apparent. So, what Taittiriya Upanishad is discussing, that's not something real. But why? Then why it's discussing? It will be answered a little later. Then there is in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and the very famous Upanishad, there is one Madhu Vidya. It is mentioned in second chapter, fifth mantra. द्वयोर्द्वयोर् मधु ज्ञाने परम ब्रह्म प्रकाशितम पृथिव्या मुद्रे चैव यथाकाश प्रकाशितः. There is discussion on the sameness of the individual and the cosmic. There is udar, stomach, and there is this cosmic, the world. And there it is discussed how both these are same. There is no difference between. So the same Akash dwells within both the earth and the stomach. Likewise, the same Brahman dwells within the pairs described in the Madhu. In Madhu Vidya, this famous Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, they talk about Adhidevat and Adhyatma. These are technical terms. We need not go into it. This is actually meant for the scholars, that those persons who are into technicalities. Main thing is the sameness between the individual and the cosmic. So, when you think of the same Akash, same space between two pods, just like that, the space within your stomach and space within this earth, they are one and the same. So, when Madhu Vidya discusses these two, there also the idea is same. That it's the same Brahman. The way is the same space which is within, say, stomach and this universe. Just like that, it is same Brahman everywhere. This is what it says. Because throughout the Upanishads, say for example, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad itself and then in Kathopanishad, multiplicity has been condemned repeatedly. What happens is their method of argument is very simple. They say that, okay, at some places they are talking about two, and sometimes they are talking about lack of multiplicity. Which one is correct? You have to justify that. You have to explain why at times Upanishads are talking about multiplicity and at other times they are talking about absence of multiplicity? The answer will be because maturity of our mind, they are different. Verse number 13 says, Jivatmano ananyatvam abhedena prashasyate nanatvam nindyate yaccha tadevavi samanjasam. Verse number 13. The identity of the Jiva and Atman. Jiva is that which is identified with the individual mind and the body. The identity of Jiva and Atman is praised by pointing out that non-duality, multiplicity is condemned. Therefore, non-dualism alone is free from error. There are many statements in Upanishad. Mrityos or mrityum apnoti ya naneva pashyati. For example, Natu Uttad Dvitiyam Asti, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, and Idam Sarvam Yad, I am Atma. Whatever is Atman. So, what Mandukya says is that, look, the Upanishads are so full of statements that condemn multiplicity. So, whatever example you are bringing from here and there about multiplicity is wrong. So, why multiplicity has been discussed? This is something very interesting. Now, verse number 14. If you can understand verse number 14, which is actually pretty simple, then you will understand why Taittiriya Upanishad discusses reality as 5 seeds, and in Madhu Vidya there is 2 realities. Jivatmano prithakvam yat pragutpatte prakirtitam bhavishyad vrityagonam tan mukhyatvam hi na yujyate. The separateness of the Jiva and Atman, separateness of Jiva and Atman, that has been discussed many times in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in Gita, and many places, which has been declared in the earlier section of the Upanishads. Many times in the Upanishads, we come across the separateness between Jiva and Atman. We do come across. Mandukya is not negating them. It says, why? Dealing with the creation is Bhavishyad Vritti. Those of you can remember, the term is Bhavishyad Vritti. Nearest English translation is figurative. Figurative. Because this section states only what will happen in the future. This separateness cannot be the real meaning of these passages. Here comes the final argument says, the Upanishads have been discussing separateness, and the Upanishads have been talking about oneness. Which one is correct? Gaudapada says, you have to look at these 2 stages, multiplicity and oneness, through Bhavishyat Avritti. This is an expression, the kind of expressions that these sages had, amazing. Bhavishyat Vritti, futuristic comment. What is futuristic comment? Acharya Shankar explains this beautifully. He says, in English it won't make sense, but in Indian languages it makes sense. And that to people who are from Punjab, they will not understand, but people from Bengal, Bihar, UP, partly UP will understand. It says, Odanam Pachati. Odanam. Many people in India call bhat. Bhat. In Bengal, in Bihar, in many others, bhat. But many others call it chawal. In English, they say rice. So, it says, Odanam Pachati. Odan, cooked rice. Odanam is being cooked. It's not odanam that is being cooked. The correct English translation would be, mom is baking bread. Like if you go to some bakery, they'll say, What is he doing? Baking bread. You are not baking bread. It's dough. Only when it is baked, it will be called bread. Or say in India, you say cooking biryani, vegetable biryani, this biryani, that biryani. But it's not biryani. Come on. Once it is cooked, once it is ready, you will say it is biryani. So why do you say cooking biryani? It is based on the future result. Sometimes we use expressions that are actually projections in future. This is known as Bhavishyad Vritti. So Mandukya says, Bhavishyad Vritya Gaunam. These statements that are here, they are pointing at the future. When you look at things in that way, you will understand. So, initially, when they are talking about creation, they're talking about multiplicity. All these things, all these discussions are leading towards the oneness. Because here comes somebody to learn, say, religion, spirituality, Upanishads, and you start with a bang. Somebody comes to study physics, and you start talking about length, shrinking, time, dilation. Will he understand anything? No, he will not. You will have to begin with, say, Newton's laws of motion, something that we understand. From there, slowly, you start moving towards relativity, towards quantum physics. You don't go on telling that whatever you see in this universe, they're all in motion. Simply because these subatomic particles within an atom are in motion. No, you don't. Slowly you lead your student, slowly you lead a learner to that level. Exactly like that, the Upanishads are slowly leading the learners towards that unification. Wherever there is this mention of multiplicity, it is not as truth, it's not as reality, but it is leading a learner towards unification. So, all these statements, all these statements, they're actually taking you towards that oneness. Continues in verse number 15. मृत लोह विश्वलिंगाद्ये शिष्टिर्या चोदित अन्यथा उपाय सो अवताराय नास्ति भेद कथंचन. Yeah, its idea is continued. So these scriptural statements regarding the creation, using the examples of earth, iron, and sparks, are for the purpose of clarifying the mind. Multiplicity does not really exist in any manner. It's just continuation of what we were discussing. Starting verse number 16 says, why talk about this if it is not real? Say because the minds are of different kinds, and for different mindset we need different kind of teachings, and from there a person has to be led to the ultimate truth. So with that we end today's talk. Thank you so much. Om Shanti Shanti.